everybody some of the ways that I've taught knitting. And I'll start with just the basic, the finger knitting. And I guess from the show of hands, about half the people already know how to finger knit. So I'm just going to do this anyway. This is a story that maybe people have heard before. And the fun thing about telling stories to go with the knitting is that you can just make up stories too on the spur of the moment, and you can change the stories. I'll use a classic story for the finger knitting. It's in the packet. It's of the shepherd and the sheep, and he always had his sheep I'll probably change it from what's in there. My stories are different every time I tell them. He saw his sheep grazing up on the hill, and every time he wanted to bring them home, he had such trouble getting them to come home. He tried different things, the dog herding them in, and dragging each one of them, and whistling and different things. And finally he had this idea. He was just going to gather all of his sheep together in a gate and get them to come in the gate, and they'd be all nice and organized. So what he did was he made a little gate, and then you make a slip knot. And then he said, "Okay, come here, little sheep." And each little sheep would just go through the gate. And then he would take the other sheep. He'd say, "Okay, come here, little sheep." And that little sheep would go through the gate. And he had all the little sheep, one after the other, going through the gate. And they all looked so organized, and he was very happy. So he had all his nice little sheep in a row that had gone through the gate. But then he noticed after a time, this was sort of slow. Every time the sheep went through the gate, he's here, little sheep, and the sheep goes through the gate. Here, little sheep, sheep goes through the gate. It was really sort of annoying, and this, sort of went on and on. So he said, I'm going to teach the sheep a trick so that they can go through the gate faster. So he made a gate again, and this is a slip knot again. And then he taught the sheep that all they had to do was stand in front of the gate, just like that, and then jump over the gate. And so then the next one would stand in front of the gate and jump over the gate. And that way he didn't have to stand there and say, "Here, little sheep, go through the gate," and he didn't have to open the gate. They would just jump over the gate, just like that. And they just keep jumping. And then at the end of the evening, when all the sheep were done, they would still be all in a row, and the row is so much nicer. And then all the little sheep would be in a row, and he was so happy. And how many people have heard that story before? It's a story it's a finger knitting story. People who don't know how to finger knit, did you sort of get an idea from that how to finger knit? You just start with a slip knot, and you put it on the finger. And then I'll tell you a secret too. If you don't do the slip knot, it's okay. You can do a regular knot, it still works. And so it works better this way. And then you just, from the slip knot, you just put this in front, and then this one goes over it. And I actually find this story is very useful on how to remember things. And so it just goes, so the children, as they're remembering, it helps them remember the act, what they do. Because the thing that's frustrating for a teacher, and you've probably found this, is you'll teach something to the children, and then they'll come the next day and say, "I forgot how to cast on," or "I forgot how to do that. I forgot how to do that slip knot," And so it's nice if you tell them the story initially, then you can gently remind them, well, do you remember the story? And give them a chance. This is part of perseverance. This is part of teaching, independence, is giving them a chance to figure it out for themselves. And then if they don't remember them, you can show them again with the story. But it makes it easier for them to remember. So just the sheep standing there jumps over, and you're just doing that over and over. And then I have a few cute stories for casting on. And you just start with the needle. And people who know how to knit already know how to cast on, but you probably haven't heard these stories before because I made them up. I like making up stories, and it's fun. It's fun also to encourage the children to make up stories. If anyone's taught before, you'll know that by teaching something, you learn it better. So sometimes I'll suggest to the children, well, now that you know how to cast on, can you make up a story about casting on? So I'll share with you 2 stories about casting on. And this story's about a dragon, but I like dragons. No, it's not in there. I like dragons, and so I don't like the killing dragon stories. They make me sad. And so this story is just about somebody borrowing something from a dragon. So what would happen is that the dragon lived on this hill, in a cave, as most dragons do. And there was a village of people at the foot of the hill, as there are in most dragon stories. And the problem is that these dragons had a special flower in their cave that would heal all diseases. Well, this wasn't a problem because this flower was wonderful. It would heal all diseases. But the problem was the dragons didn't like sharing. Now, the people in the village, they didn't want to steal the flowers from the dragon. They just wanted to borrow them. They just wanted to use little bits of them, and then the flowers would grow back. So they sent some men from the village up to get some flowers from the dragon's cave. So the first man, he went up the hill, and he went right straight up the hill into the cave, and he got nothing. He ended up with nothing. And came back and said, I couldn't get any flowers. And the second man from the village, he snuck up the hill very slowly, and he went around the back, and he got nothing. He ended up with no flowers at all. So then they sent up a little boy from the village, and he knew how to be clever, because he was used to like sneaking up on his sister and sneaking up on his mom and sneaking out of the house and things that little boys do. So he knew what to do. So what he did was he snuck all the way around the cave, all the way around the back, and then in around the front again, so he knew all the terrain. And then he went under the bush and stuck a little stick right in the cave, got a flower, and took it with him. Oops. And then he did it again. He said, I'll just do it again. So he snuck around the cave, all the way around the cave. And when he got to the front, he went under the bush, stuck his little stick in a flower, and took it with him. And he came down the hill with 3 flowers. And then they waited a time for the flowers to grow back, and then they sent him up to get more. So that's sort of a cute story that goes with passing on. And then I'll tell you another one, just one more, just to give you an idea how you can make up your own. Because it's more fun to make up your own. You tie on the knot again. And this one is about a little boy who loved donuts. And his grandmother made the best donuts. And so he was always trying to think of ways, this is too long. He was always trying to think of ways to get her to give him donuts. So he would go over to her house and say, oh, Grandma, give me some donuts. And she said, listen, she said, you're always asking for donuts. She said, but if I make so many donuts, I run out of flour, and I run out of sugar, and I run out of all the ingredients. So she said, we have to cooperate on this. And she lived on a mountain on one side, and the grocery store was on the other side. And so this is why, she would have made donuts for him every day. But it was just really hard for her to walk all the way around the mountain to get the ingredients. So the little boy, she made a deal with him. She said, if you'll walk around the mountain to the other side and bring me the ingredients, I'll make you donuts. So he did. He walked all the way around the mountain to the other side, and then he walked back to his grandma's house and went in the door, and she gave him a donut. There. And every time he did that, walked around the mountain and came back and went in her door, he got a donut. And so it was a nice agreement between them, that every time she made donuts, he would go get the ingredients. And so little stories like that can help the children and us. I learn better from stories than from children's things. So that can help everyone, learn how to cast on. Then with the knitting,